Okay, well, welcome to all the parents, and hopefully there's some students sitting next to you to our information night for our Central Australia experience for next year. My name's Lauren. I'm currently the Year 10 Wellbeing Leader, and next year I'll actually be the Year 10 Wellbeing Leader again. So I'll be the Wellbeing Leader for all your wonderful people. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And for those who don't know, Carmen Ahern, she's our Head of Culture and Identity. So we're kind of running this evening. We're currently only a few weeks away from our 2023 Central Australia experience. So our head's kind of very much there, very much looking forward to it. But it's also crazy that it's creeping up. Next year's experience is so close. So we're just going to run through, I guess, the basics of the trip. And the important kind of dates and information. So as you can see from the screen there, our trip for next year will run on the 23rd of June till the 30th. So it will be the final week of term 2. Leave on the Sunday, so the Sunday before the last week of term, and then arrive back home the first Sunday of the school holidays. It is cabin accommodation. A lot of people are really familiar with the St Joseph's Central Australia trip, which ours is very similar to, except we're not in tents, we're in cabin accommodation. Obviously meals and snacks are included, and roughly at the moment the maximum price is $2,700. So that's kind of the basics of the start. And Carmen, do you want to change the slide and we'll go on to the next bit?
Okay, so I'm Carmen Ahern, and I possibly have met lots of the parents online tonight. So thanks for coming. It's really exciting, as Lauren said, to be getting ready to organise next year's group, but it is a little overwhelming at the moment, actually, given that we haven't yet done our 2023 experience. So it is coming up. But I wanted to go through some of the objectives of why we would do this. It's a longer trip. It is a bit unusual in that it's not just your two night sort of camping experience. It is over that full week. So the reason that we do it is on the screen. Now, we know there's a lot of content on the screen, but we wanted to make sure that if parents weren't able to come tonight, that they can then read back through it later and get a sense of what we're talking about as well. So I will sort of run through it, but yeah, apologies for all the information. So we do want students to have that experience of understanding how big Australia really is. And often we're so good at jumping on a plane for some people that they don't actually get the sense of how vast our country is and what that landscape is looking like. So that's a pretty amazing aspect of the trip. And in doing that, observing the landscape as they go, you don't see that same view from a plane, or if you stay really close to home. We want our students to experience interesting and unusual opportunities like sleeping underground at Coober Pedy, and encounter the heart of our country by walking at Uluru and getting around the base of an incredible monolith that's really significant in Australia. Through doing that, learning about Aboriginal culture with a few experiences, one of going into a community for an afternoon, but also just meeting local Aboriginal people for where they are. Discovering stories of early pioneers and adventurers who are not coming from a First Nations perspective necessarily. Be challenged by walking the rim of Kings Canyon, which has an incredible view. Quite a steep climb up, but fairly flat at the top, and getting these amazing expanses of landscape. Meeting people whose lives are really different to where we live. Building resilience by being away for an extended period. So it's not something that a parent can come and pick you up if you're feeling a little homesick. It's something that you really need to work through, and that's really important. And understanding that people around you help you to do that. So it does build resilience by having to work things out. Nurturing connections with others that they may not have had much to do with, students and staff. They are moving into senior years, and it's really important sometimes to step outside of your own little peer group and realise there's other kids out there. And creating memories that then they can share on the way home when they get home. Not all families get to experience this, and we'd love our students to come back and be able to share those with people who've supported them but not been able to go. So they're our objectives of the trip. The travel arrangements, so one way will be driving by coach. We'll be taking one coach. There'll be one trip. This year there's two. There will only be one next year. So one way we will fly and one way we will drive. And that's still being ironed out by Coles at the moment. So we're working on that at the moment, which way we'll actually travel. We'll probably fly up and drive back. So this is an itinerary. This is a bit the way that it would look. So day one, Geelong over to Bungaree Station, which is Clare. It's just above sort of Adelaide, near Adelaide Hills. Then from there going to Cooper Pedy and staying in the underground accommodation. This itinerary here is going direct to Kings Canyon. However, this year we're going direct into Yalara, which is at Uluru. So either of those destinations is a similar distance. So those first 3 days, if it's on a coach, are about 12 hours each day of driving and sitting back and relaxing. So they are big, long days on the coaches. So this sample itinerary has got Kings Canyon with the 2 nights and Yalara, which is is the town that services Uluru for 2 nights, and then heading across to Alice Springs and having a night there, then going from Alice back to Geelong on that final day. So that's just, it would look very similar to that, but it just gives you a sense of the direction. You can see some of the images there of the sorts of landscapes that would be crossed. So some of the experiences that these young people would have doing an opal mine tour at Cooper Pedy, sleeping underground, which is kind of cool. And it's not like sleeping in a coffin. If you haven't ever sort of had that experience of being underground, it is quite vast, open spaces. So people that think they're going to be worried about feeling claustrophobic, it is a little different to that. Walking Kings Canyon, which I spoke about, Lilla Aboriginal community for an afternoon, spending some time in at the school. Catatuja, which are otherwise known as the Olgas, or the name that had been given but now returned to its original. Uluru, spending some time watching the sunset. I'm not sure yet, either cycling around it or walking, but certainly going around. It's about 10.3 kilometres to get around the bottom, and it's flat. It's a very flat walk, like being on a footpath. Riding a camel, we will do that. Going to the Alice Springs Telegraph Station, having a visit from Rex the Snake Man to talk about some nature and wildlife, and also visiting the Royal Flying Doctors. So there's some of the experiences that are expected. Now, obviously, we're moving through our trips in the next couple of weeks with our current Year 10s. So there could be some slight tweaking of this based on what we feel, but it wouldn't be significant. And it would certainly, if we did tweak it and slightly change it, that would be for a good reason, where we think, oh, maybe that we could do something better, or we might just come across something that seems really interesting for the students that we're going with. So we'll work with Coles coaches to refine that, obviously, for the next trip for next year. Lauren, I think this might have been you chatting about this one.
Yeah, so this isn't as exciting as the other slides, but basically this morning I spoke to all of Year 9 and told them about this evening, and also told them about the experience that will be offered to them. So tomorrow in their community groups, they'll have, or at any time during tomorrow and for the next week, they'll need to go onto Simon and fill out an application form. So the application form is a Microsoft form. They're just got to click on it and fill it out. Obviously, we need students to follow school rules. We're on the trip. Look, we'll go through all this stuff more in detail. You can read it there for yourself, but it's fairly standard. Obviously, it's a big thing, us taking these people away for 8 days, so 8 nights. So we do obviously really expect excellent behaviour. As parents, as with all camps or excursions, you need to agree to collect your child at your own expense in the event of illness, injury, or misbehaviour. And it is up to you. And again, we can talk about this closer to the time, but whether you decide to take out personal travel insurance or an ambulance cover. There will be a payment schedule, which we will be able to send out once you've been accepted on the trip. And I think we're hoping to offer places by the end of this term. Is that correct, Carmen?
Well, actually secure places with
Yeah.
deposits. So I've got that in a later slide. So I'll go through all of that once you're done. Yeah.
So yeah, we will, our responsibility is obviously to look after your young person and try and have as much clear communication to yourselves about what's going to be taking place in June next year and in the lead up to that. Do you want to change the slide, Carmen? So the considerations, and this year's been great learning for Carmen and I, the kind of things that have popped up, the things that I guess you need to take into consideration for yourself and your child is that is absence for school for a week. So it's their responsibility to catch up on work, especially if your child has decided to accelerate and do a unit 1 and 2. That is something that probably need to consider. It's definitely not something that is a blocker, but it's something they'll need to be the kind of student that will be able to catch up on that work. Again, something that's really popped up is missing sport or part-time work because of the timing though of this trip, the trip for your young people, because it's Sunday to Sunday. Hopefully, it won't impact sport as much as what it seems to be doing the students that are going on our trips. But it is something you need to consider. You need to consider that we will be returning 2 days into the school holiday. So if you have other trips planned or you wanted to go away, you need to obviously consider those clashes and obviously the cost. If offered a place on the trip, payment of deposit obviously needs to be done by certain dates so we can secure obviously bookings and tours and all that kind of stuff. And we, Coles, I don't know, that is called Coles Coaches. I'm not even sure the name. Coles Coach are the ones that we go through. So we're kind of mandated by a lot of the deadlines and the timeframes that they give to us. In the students' applications, we will consider things obviously like behaviour. Again, it's definitely not a blocker. Like if your young person's made some poor choices, it doesn't mean they can't go. It's just about will just be about working around, making sure they make good decisions moving forward. Past attendance at camps is something that needs to be taken into consideration. I'm not quite sure about your cohort, but I know currently the Year 10s, there's a lot of students who, for different reasons, weren't able to be away from home for 2 nights for a couple of the camps. And I think that's something that obviously needs to be taken into consideration when we're taking them away for 8 nights. And yeah, their ability to manage being away from home. And I think COVID's really changed the landscape with that for a lot of young people that, some kids just don't want to be away from home, and that's okay. But obviously consider that in talking, I guess, as a family about whether it is something that you want to apply for. And obviously the ability to cope with heat, teachers for 8 days. We've got written the ability to manage without technology. For this camp coming up, we are allowing students to have their phones because we know, obviously taking photos and listening to music, but we will be taking phones off students at dinner time, so they won't have access to their phones in their rooms at night. We'll probably blow a fuse in the cabins that we're staying in by charging them all at night, but we will allow phones, but it will be at our discretion when they're kind of divvied out. I think that's about it for that one, Carmen.
Okay, so thanks, Lauren. So this here is basically the timeline. Now, most of this has come through to parents on the emails that have come out in relation to this. So that's today, Tuesday, 15th of August. So we've had our student session this morning, and now this is obviously the parent session. So in the morning or tomorrow, so we will email the recording out to all parents, and the application form, it is actually on Simon. So we changed that access point. So it's students that access that through Simon. It's not a parent application form, it's a student's application form. So we want them to be able to fill it in. That's why, we do go direct to the students with that. So those students will have a week to submit that application. So by Wednesday of next week at 4:00. Okay, that's really important that gets in. And we probably take it a bit of we know that things can get busy. We get busy in our lives and our families, but we would think if kids really wanted to do this, they would get that form in. So you can see there it's the 23rd of August. So by Wednesday of the following week, we would be wanting to be able to advise of the successful applicants. So we would advise either way, but we want to be able to offer those places to those students. And then on Wednesday the 13th, that is when we would have a $500 deposit that's due to secure that place. Now, we would expect that there will potentially be a waiting list. So if your young person is offered a position on the trip and that deposit date does cause a bit of worry for you, we need parents to get in touch so we can help to work around that. Because if we don't hear anything, we will just go back to our waiting list and pass it on to the next student. So it's really important that those dates are watched. If students hand those application forms in late, it's too late. So we need them in. And part of the reason for that is because Lauren and I are both going to Central Australia. So I will be in Central Australia as of the 31st of August until about the 7th or 8th, and Lauren will be going on the 9th. So we're actually on a really tight time frame as well, and we want to give families as much notice as we can so that they can save, that their young person might go and have a part-time job, their young person might be contributing to the cost. So to be fair on families, we need to secure these places as quickly as we can, so they know what's happening. Once we continue to work with Coles and secure and know the students that are going, we'll work with those families, and we will actually set up a payment sort of a plan. Now you can pay it more quickly if you want to, but we'll set up a sort of a scheduled plan that will break it down into about 4 payments. But we would expect that all payments are in. The total cost would be in by 2 months prior to departure. Now that allows that if there's a default on payment, we can actually, check in with families, but then perhaps pass on to another family, and they've still got time to be able to manage the cost of that. It's a really great time to do it when the students are year 10, because we do understand that a lot of students, once they're 15, will go and look at part-time or casual work. And that is a really great way for students to have a little bit of a saving goal when they can actually, maybe work with their families to suggest how they could support something, a little bit of their savings toward their trip. So it is a good time to be able to do that. So what we might do is open it up to questions. Did I miss anything, Lauren?
I think so.
No, so we might open it up to questions that I can stop sharing my screen. Now this information will be sent out to you, so don't stress if you haven't taken a lot of notes. So I'm actually going to unshare my screen so I can actually see people. Oh, awesome. I hadn't been able to see anybody. So now we can, I guess, open it up if people have got questions that they'd like us to respond to. You can either type them in the chat or you can unmute and jump into the conversation.
Yeah, hi. I'll kickstart if I can, if you don't mind. Just curious if there is a cap on numbers for the trip. I may have missed that part. Sorry.
Yes, I can see. I think it's a James there.
James, that's correct. Yeah. Hi,
yeah,
Carmen.
James, there is a cap on the numbers. So we're taking one trip. The coach, it's to do with staff ratios as well, and with the new agreement for staffing, we need to manage how many staff we can facilitate on the trip as well. So yeah, there is a cap on the number of students, and it will be in the high 30s to about 40. So it wouldn't go over 40 students.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Carmen, am I right in saying that it's the same time as the Indonesian trip?
Yes, and I was thinking that before, Lauren. I meant to say that it is at the same time as the Indonesian trip. So it's been deliberately placed at the end of term 2 because we feel that minimises the interruption to learning and teaching time for students. and for staff as well. So families do need to make a choice if they're thinking of the other. They're different, and that's up to individual families to choose which way they want to go with that. Yeah.
There's a question there in the chat. How many people do you expect to apply? No idea. There was probably 50 this year.
I think there was actually more, Lauren, because that's why we ended up, this year was a little bit different because we were trialing it, and we ended up we had about 85 or 90 at the parent night, and we received so many applicants that we ended up putting a second trip on. We won't be putting a second trip on this year because we can't staff it. So it is definitely only one trip for this year. So yeah, so we've got no idea how many applicants that we would get. If you coach up and then fly back, given that it's school holidays, can we meet a young person in the Northern Territory to collect them? Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's not necessarily going to impact cost because that would be factored in by Coles. At this point in time, so just Krista, just to fill you in with that, we've got Coles looking into the potential of the other direction, in that if we've realised that probably if we choose the option to fly and then drive home, we can trim off a little bit of cost because we can avoid the school holiday flight prices. Whereas if we go the other way, we're going to be flying back in school holiday time, first weekend. We're really mindful with any of these experiences about equity and about the capacity of families to be able to access. So our priority really is about trying to minimise cost as much as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
But it's something to work with, Krista, anyway. If that's an applicant, we'll work with people to work out what works for their families.
Okay. I just thought that it might be a possibility of family trip, picking him up, keep going.
And it may well be, Krista. And then there's just those sorts of things to iron out with families, in that we would always know if your family was delayed, we can't be delayed because those sorts. There's just those things, and we can't leave a student behind.
Yes.
So there's those little things that we'd always have to be concerned about, because we wouldn't want to be in a situation where we're going, oh my goodness, we can't leave this kid. Yeah.
No, that's
anyway,
fine. Yeah.
Iron it out down the track.
Thank you.
Okay.
Also, I guess speaking from experience of being with the Year 10s this year, there are so many. There won't be a Year 10 camp. There won't be like a whole year level camp. We've found this year with so many, like if a student's doing outdoor ed, they go on a number of camps with the Indonesian trip, Central Australia, and with the amount of career expos and days in Melbourne, poor Year 10 teachers are like barely seeing students a lot of the time. So we actually won't be having a whole Year 10 camp, just to be aware of that. Any other questions?
Maybe not. Maybe we've answered everything, Lauren.
21 would be a nice little group to take. Is there a minimum number?
Well, that will depend on. Remember this year, Lauren, there was the least. If we get really low numbers, the cost increases because they still have to take a full coach. So once we get through the 2023 trip, Coles will provide us with more specific documentation around our contractual obligations, but they're trying to get our 2023 trips done before they move to that. So we are working with them, and we can estimate that figure at the most of being 2,700. It may not be that much, but if we get really low numbers, we would have to weigh up whether it's worth it because of the overheads with it. Is there a large outdoor ed camp scheduled for 2023? Well, it would depend on whether those students have chosen outdoor ed. I'm not sure what is meant by a large outdoor ed camp.
Do you mean 2023 or 2024?
Oh.
So currently the Year 10s, they do a massive day to the snow, which I don't know if they'll do again, because the 2 days they went, there was no snow, unfortunately. But I think they do maybe 1 2-nighter, maybe 1 1-nighter, but they do lots and lots of day excursions as well, so they are out a lot, but we can Have you guys had an information night about subjects for next year? No, that might be helpful. Maybe we'll look into do something like that and give a bit of information about what's going on with each of those subjects. Gab, I may have missed this info in your presentation, but after applications is there an interview process? Yeah, probably. If there's
Well,
we have
although we didn't talk about that though, Lauren. I mean, it's not a formal interview process because of our timeline. What we will be doing is generating the information that we have and getting a list of the students that have applied. And our first port of call will be giving that list to Craig Durran and Andy Walscott as the Year 9 coordinators, and getting them to look down through that list and saying, well, essentially we want roughly this number of students. Tell us the students that meet certain criteria in that. One, they can cope with they've managed on school camps. They haven't needed to be picked up because they're so homesick on day 2 that they need to go home. It might then look at things like, all of those things like contribution to school, attitude, behaviour, a genuine interest in the trip, good reasons for wanting to go. If we had students that we were really concerned about with language or behaviour that might be considered to be racist, now we would perhaps say to that kid, hey, I don't know, like, how do you think you would manage on that trip if you're going to come into contact with Aboriginal people? Is that going to be an issue for you? So we don't have a formal interview process in there. I guess if it came to it and we had that many students and we couldn't decide, well, then we would have to look at putting in another step to that. Yeah, but but at this point in time, we haven't got an interview process.
In answer to that, the next one, if the rare event, the numbers are low, probably wouldn't open up to Year 11s again, but I reckon if I got in front of them again, I could convince a few more to go. I still remember, I always tell the kids this and they get sick of me telling it, but I remember my Year 10 Central Australia camp, like, it's such a good opportunity. And I think if, I don't think that will happen. I think if we did, we'd probably just try to drum up a bit more business and tell a few kids that are going to talk to their friends. Is that what you think, Carmen?
Yeah, I really do think that too. I think based on last year's interest, I couldn't see that this would drop off significantly. I know the Indonesian trip is at the same time, but that will only cater for certain kids. I think there'll be strong interest in this, and I would expect that we will have kids that unfortunately will miss out. Or someone else, Natalie, she remembers hers also from 1986. That's awesome. Yeah.
I was 1994. I actually made a playlist last year for the students. Hits of 95 it was, Year 10. Yeah, it's so good. It's such an amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
If you do think of other questions that you haven't come up with today, feel free to email Lauren or myself. And if you can't remember who we are, email to reception and they'll flick those on to us and we can help you. Some of it, some of the little fine-tuned nitty-gritty stuff might be some of those questions that we would iron out as we go, but essentially, like as we're closer, but essentially, we will look after your kids. We will give them an awesome experience of Central Australia and what it's like out there. We know that they can be homesick. And we know what that's like, and we would always look after your kids in regards to that. We will look after kids with medical and dietary because, we always do that on any camp. So there will be certainly provision for all of those kids. We want kids to be able to access the opportunities. So that's why, keeping it low cost, keeping in mind balance in their life, but if you've got any specific questions, you're very welcome to get in touch with us and we'll reply to you to help with that process. But really important that the kids keep track of the application deadline, Wednesday of next week at 4:00. Won't take them long. And that's only one step in it. I mean, if a kid uses AI and writes an incredible application, there's going to be other factors that come into play anyway. I mean, they could make an amazing application, but the reality is we do know the kids pretty well. So we're going to be able to sift through them and work them out. But we know they're getting older too. They're getting older. They're getting more mature. Kids are entitled to fresh starts and all of that. So just if your kid's been a bit of a bit of a rat bag. We don't always see that, and we can celebrate that too and go, you know what, we still think this is going to be awesome for them. So don't put off your child if they sometimes get in trouble. Or don't say to them, you better be really good because otherwise you can't go, because we know them anyway. So let them apply if they want to, and if you're happy. Is there anything else, Loz?
I don't think so. That's
Okay.
it.
Well, we can stay on for a couple of minutes if you would like, but you're more than welcome to go. The recording will be distributed tomorrow. We'll email that out. I think we'll give it to our IT guys. They just normally cut out a little bit of the wait time at the start. But we will get it out to you tomorrow so you can have a look. And students they've got the access to the link to apply tomorrow. It's there, and it's there all week, isn't it, Laura?
Yep.
Until next Tuesday. So it's on Simon. Is that something that's viewable by parents as well, Lauren, when you put it on? Did you do students and parents?
Couldn't tell you. I'll have a look.
We can edit that anyway, so they can see it too. Yeah. All right. So if you feel like you've got enough info and you would like to go, you're more than welcome to. If you would like to stay around for a bit longer, we're still here. So feel free to do whatever suits you. Thanks everyone for coming. We look forward to the applicants.